Received quite a few recommendations from you guys to check out this little game called Sacrifice, which is apparently a pretty weird RTS game. Just judging from the initial screen, I feel like it might be more along the lines of Kingdom Under Fire, Crusaders, something like that. But we do have some funky looking creatures here, so we'll see. But of course, as always, Mandalore's videos are top notch, so you should 100% go and watch the OG first and support the original video. Link to that is at the very top of the description, as always. I wonder who made this game. Is this going to be another one made by Relic?
The pain.
That's like a Spore creation gone wrong.
Back when I played Overlord, I thought the minions were fun, but I wished I had more.
Ah, yeah, that's right, Overlord. I should check this one out. I've always wanted to play a game where I play as the evil big bad guy so I can learn how to be evil, and apparently this was one of the suggestions you guys told me about.
Control over them. That's when a lot of people started emailing me about Sacrifice. I had not heard much about it, and not for years. The short version is that it's a third-person game where you play as a spellcasting wizard, but it's also an RTS game, with all the in-depth formations and controls you'd expect from one. The campaign has a bizarrely high-profile cast, and Tim Curry plays a god.
24
Tim Curry.
souls. That should do nicely.
Alright, but first we have work to do. The good news—
What is going on? How did this come to be? Is this a similar situation to something like Persona 4 Golden's cast being absolutely stacked, but because back then they weren't as big of a name as they are now, it was able to actually happen because back then they could afford them.
is that trying the GOG copy, it did work immediately. But it's locked in 4x3 and locked at 30 FPS. Not to mention the resolution is pretty low. Well, by using the ever-reliable DG Voodoo wrapper, the frame rate and resolution unlock and it runs great.
Never heard of this one before, but I'm assuming it just changes the settings for a video game.
Except I can't record it now. Some old games are like a deep-sea fish. Sure, you can go and visit the fish in its habitat, but try to bring it up to the surface, and sometimes it explodes. So I did some tweaking. I barely remember to record it properly, but you don't need to do all that. This is good, but now the icons are stretched out. Luckily, Sacrifice has an easy-to-install widescreen fix. Normally this should be the end of it, but there's one more crucial step. DG Voodoo unlocked the frame rate completely, but now you need to cap it back to 60. If you dare to run the game above that, the enemy AI breaks down. They'll just sit there and not do anything. Now you're done, but there is one.
Intriguing. I would love to know when these things happen in video games, like, you know, movement being tied to frame rate or enemy AI behaving erratically due to frame rate. How exactly does that work? Like, how does the AI interpret the frames that is being displayed currently? Do they actively do that? Or is it just dependent on how it's programmed?
For reasons that I don't and cannot fully understand, sometimes when you relaunch the game it resets your textures down to low. Being an older game where you manage a lot of units, it can be easy to miss this. I ended up having to re-record a lot of stuff to avoid the issue, so if things suddenly look blurrier for no reason, that's what's happening. The same thing seems to have hit other people trying to upload footage of the game too, so I feel less crazy. The main menus stay at a super low resolution too, so it is hard to tell when you relaunch it. So now we can see whether or not it was worth jumping through all these hoops.
A very unique art style, that's for sure.
It has begun.
We're too late again, Master. All dead.
I begin to think the cause of this destruction cannot be other than myself.
Master.
My dark experiments come to a most wicked end.
The intro reminds me a lot of Legacy of Kain. The atmosphere is dark and moody and it—
Legacy of Kain. That one I don't know too much about, but I have seen before. And honestly, just the way the main character looks kind of reminds me of the main character of that. Not exactly, but I think it's more so to do with the graphics of the time, and the character models just looking sort of similar.
Looks like you might be playing the villain. I cut this down for time, but there are shots of just fields and fields of corpses. And my Kain meter keeps getting higher.
It seems you are to be my salvation after all.
I am no one's salvation. I am a pawn of doom itself.
What? You speak in riddles, sir. I wonder if even my wisdom can decipher them.
It can't. So you go off to visit the gods. Playing as the Wandering Wizard Eldred, your services are very in demand. From here the story can start diverging, so I'll save all that for later. Let's get into the game.
Diverging. Potentially, depending on the guard that we choose to serve, it changes the outcome of the story or changes the missions that we play.
Graphically, for a game from 2000, this is really impressive. It's not the best visuals of the time or anything, but more of the scale they're operating on. These can be big maps, and each faction can bring dozens of units to a fight. Then you combine that with all the magic effects and the terrain battle scarring like blood and craters, and it's kind of amazing this worked at all. The maps are simple, but the art style and the surreal nature of all of it really do go a long way.
I don't know if this is an accurate comparison, but to me, it almost feels like when nowadays they try to go for the extremely photorealistic ray tracing reflections everywhere in video games to make it sound super impressive, being like a technical marvel, if you will. RTS games back in the day seem to have taken that role, which is understandably so. And honestly, while the graphics isn't really that impressive to me, the fact that you could have these many things happening on screen at one time, especially on the more limited hardware that they had back in the day, was actually a downright impressive thing to do. I genuinely hope that someday we'll get a modern revelation, a modern advancement of technology when it comes to video games, something that we can all genuinely be amazed by. That being said, I'm not a genius, and I also don't come from the future, so I don't know what that would be.
Some will have these swirling California brushfire skies that are gorgeous to look at in their own weird way. Usually the atmosphere is oppressive, which is appropriate since Sacrifice takes place in a world that was shattered into floating islands. The balance of magic, or whatever the hell, has already shit the bed hard. This world is apocalyptic and you're constantly reminded of it. You could say the terrain is still too simple and lacks detail, and I would agree. Except this land is all made to be broken.
Whoa, wait a minute. We had environmental stuff happening too? When did this game come out? I think Mandalore earlier said the 2000s. I need to see to what extent this is happening. And honestly, I'd love to know which game was the first one to do it. But I know that this is a sort of a selling point for certain video games where they're like, oh, look at the battlefield changing as you fight wars and airplanes crash and buildings collapse and all that. It's like, cool. But most of the time, it doesn't actually do anything. Hopefully here it does, and it actually affects the way that you would plan out your strategy.
This isn't the kind of magic where you have a sparkle gun that'll get through airport security. Casting a spell in Sacrifice usually ends with a National Remembrance Day and a federal holiday. Hey, remember when that wizard came and casted a fucking volcano? Remember the Wall of Screaming Souls?
Oh my god.
You're not casting.
What is this game? How have I never heard of it? This is awesome. I've always imagined a strategy game where you can change the environment to better suit your tactics. Like, my dream game had been something like akin to a Fire Emblem or an XCOM, where there was verticality to the maps and they actually mattered. Well, it does matter in XCOM, but like from a Fire Emblem perspective, it doesn't really. And you could have like wizards or something on your team that was able to create ravines or make walls or make a freaking volcano. Sure, why not? And this game realized that all the way back when. How has this slipped under my radar?
Magic. You're committing magic, and that's how I like it. The magic looks and acts perfectly devastating, and there are tons of spells to learn. Looking at the art style, I find it hard to describe. Everything is surreal fantasy, but twisted in dark ways with a bit of humor. I don't know enough about art for this, so I think it looks like a cross between H.R. Giger and a Courage the Cowardly Dog episode. All of the magic...
My favorite cartoon. Man, Courage the Cowardly Dog is so good. If you guys haven't seen it before, even as adults, we can enjoy cartoons, okay? Definitely go back and watch some of those episodes. They were phenomenal. But I can totally see what he's talking about. You can 100% see some of these designs being in an episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog.
And units are aligned to a god in this pantheon, which again I'll come back to. But to pick one out, there's Persephone, the goddess of life and good and justice. So she has nature units like an Ent, or a mutant abomination begging for death.
My life is yours.
How about the troll? Don't be afraid of the troll. This is a force for good.
Sure.
Yeah, this is the face of life and justice. Every god's units are like this, and no matter what generic fantasy name it has, you'll have no clue what to expect. For example, a Yeti. You know what a Yeti is. Probably.
A fairy moth-like creature appears for a little over 3 seconds.
Well, in Sacrifice, this Tickle Me Necromorph is a Yeti. No matter which god you worship, it's...
Oh my god, it is a necromorph. It does have like the mandibles or the limbs sticking out of its back too. Although I think those are supposed to be its arms that it's holding up high. I'd love to know who the artist was who worked on this. Because while graphics were limited at the time, this is still very unique.
Servants are a legion of nightmares, which I do appreciate. The villains don't outstyle the forces of good. Everyone is equally unwell. Everything is so rich in color and style. Many years have...
Why is that always such an issue when it comes to the villains having way more drip and just being way more interesting than any of the good guys? Maybe that's why my love for villains came to be, because they were just far more interesting. And I'm sure most of you guys can probably agree with me on that. What can we do to make the good side cooler? Well, we already had the cool Monster Hunter-like armor for the good guys in Kingdom Under Fire, so I think more games need to adapt that and kind of bring things potentially to more of an extreme. Go all out instead of having the generic good guy with a sword and shield and regular armor being the underdog who wants good things for everybody. Make a more interesting character next time. And honestly, that's kind of why I like Warhammer, both fantasy and 40k. In both universes, depending on your perspective, everyone's a villain, and that means everybody gets to be as cool as a villain would be.
Past, and it still remains incredibly unique. There's so much variety, and I kept wanting to see more of what was out there. As you might expect, there is a soundscape to complement this. The actual battle and interface effects are stock, but not always what you'd expect.
Your creatures are under attack.
What? Did Mandalore do an edit, or are we actually using stock machine gun sounds? What is going on?
But the environmental effects like storms and wind are surprisingly crisp. They're not amazing or anything, but they make the lull before the fighting that much more tense. However, the music can be just as...
Not gonna lie, bros, I kind of hate the flashing white light in the sky. Like, I know that's supposed to simulate thunder. Now, that was probably the best you could do back in the day, but it's kind of giving me a headache. Oh, and just in case, before I get some comments asking about it, what do they call that? Epilepsy? I can say that I don't have it, but regardless, when you see a flashing light, I think it's not really something pleasant to look at. But I'll give it a pass because of the time this game came out in.
Varied as its visuals. The soundtrack ranges from powerful orchestra scores to what I can only call Godzilla music.
Godzilla music? Okay. Yeah, I can see what you mean. It's like a giant... Yeah, exactly. That's what I was imagining.
You are Group 4.
Bro, I can't... Godzilla music is such a good description of this. You can totally see this in one of the older Godzilla movies. Which actually, speaking of, if you guys haven't seen... I think the title of the movie was called Godzilla -1, something like that. Go and watch it. Probably one of the best Godzilla movies made, at least in the modern era.
Pardon me.
You got your ominous desert soundtrack. Cool. Oh, no! Wait, was that pathologic again?
I do wish there was more of it, since you'll be hearing the same thing a lot, but what is here is really good.
Yeah, I get the thought process that led to this Godzilla-like music that we associated with Godzilla, is because it comes from the same way of thinking. You have this army of horrific monsters, essentially, approaching the enemy. That is very fitting music for that kind of game. And it's in moments like this where I wish I knew more about music so I could maybe try and break down why we associate these kind of sounds with this type of feeling. I find those kind of things fascinating, but I'm not smart enough to say anything about it.
Attack! No survivors!
Of course, the voice acting especially deserves a mention. The cast for the campaign...
Bro, RTS games always have some of the most amazing voice acting. Before I got into them as an outsider, I did not expect that to be the case, but it is. And apparently always has been.
The campaign is huge and all the voice work is excellent. And it's paired up with compelling dialogue. Like, Sacrifice has loading screens I found more interesting than cutscenes in some other games.
Really?
No pursuit was too perilous. No sacrifice too great. Until... well... under the many heavens and in the many worlds, there are darker things than men may dream of.
I wasn't prepared for that with promotional images like this.
I am...
I can't blame you, Mandalore. But that's why they say don't judge a book by its cover. This isn't really the most accurate comparison, But for me, when it comes to anime, I had a similar feeling like what Mandalore had. When it came to an anime called, Iruma-kun? I don't know what the full English title is. From the outside, it looks like a pretty generic show. Very almost generic art style. But when you actually watch it, it's kind of peak. and it delves into a lot more things, and it just has way more fun than you would expect to have from a show that looked like that from the promotional art that you saw.
Arno, god of strife, god of slaughter, god of death. Where there is pain, I am there. Where there is suffering, I flourish. Where there is joy, yes, well, one could hardly have joy without another's suffering, no?
It feels worth it to play through the missions just to hear more of what the gods have to say and to see them bicker with each other. It adds a lot of replayability to the campaign as well, since you'll see the gods interact with each other in new ways. As for the units, I'm not kidding when I say I think the lines might have been assigned at random. They are so bizarre.
I move, I move, aha! La 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 la!
I live.
I'm the fastest.
Executing orders!
Some voices are fitting and others are flat out a joke. The more I played and the more insane designs I saw, the more I realized that that was a very good call.
Certainly not what I was expecting. But considering the style that we're going for, yeah, I can see this being a good call. Especially with how much more memorable it would make the units. Like, imagine if we tried to voice them in the way that they look like and it just ended up being a bunch of, like, horrible monster gurgles. I think that would make the game kind of not unique. It would end up being pretty meh, and doesn't really stand up to the voice acting for the gods that we saw earlier. Doing it this way, though, making it strange, keeps it in people's minds.
Each unit has layers of unexpected chaos, so presentation-wise, I've never played anything quite like it. It should come as no surprise that the gameplay itself is also incredibly interesting. As far as a strategy game goes, you don't have too many resources to manage. To start with the playable wizard, you have your health and your mana, along with a pile of souls. Your life bar is straightforward, you can heal yourself up with spells, and there's not much to talk about. Mana is where things become more complicated. It's used to cast spells and summon creatures, and it regens on its own, kind of. There's a magic supply chain. The maps have fountains of grade A Colombian magic. To tap into one, you need to build a manolith on top of it. This gives you a steady stream of the JK rolling juice and denies it to your enemy. But the
JK rolling juice. Oh god. So this is essentially like in Dawn of War when you capture a flag, a capture point, or like one of the mines or whatever you would call them. And you put a building on top so that you slowly collect more resources so you can spam out more units. Being from this perspective though, it's really weird. I'm sure that there's some sort of way that you can get like a top-down view like in Kingdom Under Fire, where you could zoom out in order to give orders to your units, but this is giving me the same feeling that I had being like a League of Legends player, played that game for several years, and then I saw Smite, and I was like, that seems familiar, but it doesn't seem right to me because I'm so used to a different camera perspective, you know?
Magic must then be transferred to you through creatures called mana whores.
The first type of creature we will need is a mana whore.
The more of these little pots of greed you have near you...
Wait, is that exactly how they're written? No, they're not. It's a little bit blurry on the screen, so I can't really tell, but I think that's H-O-A-R. Still, though. Oh, what a perfect name.
The faster your mana regens. They're weak and completely defenseless, so if they die out in a fight, you don't have any more magic coming in. Having lots of magic homes and a magic harem keeps your big blue bar beefy. However, the little guys aren't free and each costs a single soul. Souls are your money and there's no way to infinitely tap into them. When your own troops die, they leave blue souls behind that you can pick up. It's as simple as just running over them. Red enemy souls are a different problem, as they must first be cleansed of sin. To do this, you summon a special sack doctor onto the enemy soul. They come out of a portal, run up with their big syringe, and then begin the soul extraction process. When it's extracted, they'll be carried off to your altar, which is basically your headquarters. From here, the souls are properly purified and then can be welcomed as part of the Chosen. This is a battle of attrition, there are only so many souls in a fight. You have enemy forces and some neutral villagers.
Does that mean that enemy forces can also take the souls from your units in order to enhance their own army? Then yeah, it's very much a tug of war, but also a race for the neutral resources, as is per usual in most RTS games. It has me a little bit concerned, simply because of my personal experience with the Darkside campaign from Winter Assault, but it doesn't seem as tedious as that, so yeah, I think this is pretty neat.
The more powerful units cost more souls to summon, but represent a new liability. Your hard-earned spirits could get yoinked from you. So when you get in a fight, you're also trying to collect the enemy's dead and preserve your own. You could escort your sack.
It's kind of like Homeworld, where you could take over enemy ships. I think, at least in the first game, maybe the second one too, and turn your enemy's resources against them, or heavy investment. But I think in, was it Cataclysm? That maybe the enemy could also do that with your resources, so you had to be a little bit careful.
Doctors all the way back to your altar, but that can be a long way. There is an option that instead of building a manolith, you can build a shrine. Now you have a forward operating base for the holy rituals. You can also make an enemy's soul good if you just kill them hard enough. Nothing makes you repent like being atomized. The system keeps the game very action-oriented. You're never worrying about workers or really your economy in general. Fighting, killing, and gathering resources are all basically the same thing. If you die or kill an enemy wizard, you will respawn after a while, but you'll lose all the souls you were carrying. As the game goes on and more corpses are controlled, someone will get the upper hand. It does a good job of keeping things simple, since the shrine and manolith are the only buildings you can make. You can't build turrets on them, but you can leash a creature to one. You can fortify a point or go on a risky offensive against one, but again, souls are the investment.
I definitely think the depth from an RTS game has to come from something else outside of how to control your units. All of that should be as simple as possible. It's more so the interaction with the enemy AI or player itself, where I think the complexity of the game should come from. Or in the case of Sacrifice here, the potential shifting of the environment could make for some really unique strategies that we haven't really seen in other RTS games. Or maybe there are some out there, I just don't know of them yet.
The focus is kept on the action, and the strategy layer is never overwhelming. With an interactive minimap you can issue commands on and a teleport spell to your structures, you'll be fine. To wipe the enemy out completely, you'll need to go to their altar, sacrifice a unit, and then kill their wizard. If the ritual's not interrupted and the caster dies, it's game over. Their altar then begins to Gmod collision glitch into the sky, and you win. With that done, that brings us to the combat focus. How do you control a game like this? It is awkward at first, but once you learn your way around it, it is really intuitive. There's even a hotkey to assign a hotkey to whatever your mouse is over. It makes it easy to change things around on the fly.
More games need this. I found that in many modern games, this is sort of an afterthought. And sometimes, heck, there isn't even an option to hotkey something to something else. And it's incredibly frustrating when it's something that you have to use all the time, but it's just in such an inconvenient spot. I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, but I think Space Marine 2 on release had this issue, and then they patched it so that you could actually change the keybinds. I'm either thinking of Space Marine 2 or my experience playing Space Marine 1. I don't know anymore. But yeah, no, this is awesome. And this came out way before then, back in the 2000s. We had some really good ideas back in the day that we don't really do anymore, and I wonder why.
The keyboard is mainly used for grouping units and using abilities like any other RTS game, but you still have your cursor to interact with icons and units on the screen directly. For unit formations, you can hold right-click and expand out into different menus and icons. This is known as the mouse gesture control system. It was highly praised as revolutionary and innovative when Black and White 1 did it a year later.
This notion
Excuse me?
like to sell
20 years. I've had this song stuck in my head for 20 years.
I don't know what this
it makes
is.
controlling everything no problem. At least
Okay, interesting. So did this game do it first, but then all the praise went to this other game, Black and White, that came out a year after? The mouse controls reminds me of fighting game motions, actually. I believe... Well, I still have to learn, really do an in-depth dive on the history of fighting games. But I believe the reason why fighting games have the motion inputs that they do is because back then you'd be playing on an arcade machine that either had 4 or 6 buttons, which was quite limited. And so if you just had a button assigned to a specific move, then the game would get super boring pretty quickly because there wasn't a whole lot of variety to it. So the easiest way to go about it was probably to make motion inputs combined with a button press to make the character do something different. It's such a simple, and personally I find a quite intuitive system that can give the player more adjacency without adding more buttons. Some may argue that it does add complexity, and yeah, I would agree it does. But when you add more buttons, that adds a different kind of complexity. And personally for me, I'd prefer the motion inputs. But I suppose in the ideal scenario, which I hope more fighting games do, there would be a classic motion inputs and then like a modern control scheme for people who maybe aren't that keen on trying to learn to do motion inputs. But yeah, that's a whole nother conversation for a very different video.
At least when you're organizing your army, because when the fighting starts, things get chaotic. You want to manage your units to make sure they're in position to fight weaker counterparts, but you're also managing yourself and your own spells, and you're casting support stuff on your people and on yourself because you don't want to die. And all the while you're keeping an eye out for souls and the enemy wizard, and there's a lot going on in every battle. Your troops are smart enough to move and hunt down targets on their own, but they'll always be more effective with you controlling them. There's a lot to manage at once, and sometimes magic or monsters will take a higher priority. But there are players out there that are insanely good at microing this game, and I'd like to see those matches. Sure, you have active spells, but some of your units do too. In a skirmish or multiplayer match, what abilities and monsters you have can be...
I can't imagine being able to micromanage all of your units as well as your own guy. Heck, I don't even have my own guy running around the battlefield, and I still forget to do a ton of the abilities that my units have in Dawn of War.
Picked out through a spellbook. Having 9 levels of power with 5 choices each, there's a lot of room to experiment. While the units are broken down into 3 main types, melee, ranged, and flying, each god gives them their own little quirks, like Charnel's undead healing by attacking, or any other little ability a unit might have. Yet, again, it's never too overwhelming. Sacrifice's gameplay kind of sounds like it should be a mess, but it's really competent and fun. They gave it just the right amount of mechanical depth. It's a properly fleshed out strategy and action game. Not too simple, but also not so overwhelming that only StarCraft experts could play it. Sadly, the multiplayer is pretty dead, though there are skirmish maps, so we can move on to the campaign.
I see.
Persephone, what good is a holy warrior without a holy war?
How like you, Charnel.
Myself, I would sooner suspect Charnel. You do have a certain taste for destruction, don't you?
This is a story that you don't need to pop open the manual for, but it does give some additional context. The short version is, while the planet was intact and not floating islands, there was a single god. A demon tore open a portal to Hell, and then God lost that war. Hell has won, and the new pantheon of gods sort of just appeared. It does explain why the creatures look like melted Gorgonites. Hell is a base template for life here. It's a 10-mission campaign, but each god has 9 unique missions, so you can replay for 45 unique missions and then the final battle. You choose which of the gods you want to serve. There's Persephone again. Then you have James, the god of Earth, who's a giant worm. It's some kind of in-joke or nod to the developer's Earthworm Jim series.
I am James, god of Earth.
I see.
You know, rocks and soil and stuff. Some nice gems, too. Oh, it's not all brown and gray, you know. Just mostly.
Then you have Stratos, god of the air and the heavens. Tim Curry went from blowing up spooky balloons to being one.
Oh, let's to be honest, shall we? In any halfway civilized world, I would be the only god.
It seems the pantheon of gods gets more evil the more to the right you go. Persephone and James care about life on the earth, but Stratos is between good and evil. He goes where the wind takes him and seems to not care about the brewing tensions. Funnily,
going where the wind takes him and having his head be a balloon is so fitting. I wonder if that's an actual connection that they make, or just Mandalore having some smart script writing.
Enough, this isn't Tim Curry's only appearance in a weird hybrid RTS game.
Oh, you think she is the grand demon witch?
What is this?
White-winged death?
Pyro is the god of fire. The forces of good have also declared him the god of chaos and pollution and gas and waste, but he claims to be an avatar of industry and knowledge.
I intend to build factories in the Davin Forest, which is a haven for antiquated druidic thinking. All who do not flee will be enriched by my triumph. You, not least of all.
Oh no, you don't need to convince me. I'm down to enrich some druids. Finally, you have Charnel, who...
Go get him, Mandalore. Get rid of all those damn druids. This had to happen after the Mystery of the Druids video then.
Was comically evil.
It is time I reopened the demon gate of Golgotha.
Okay, but he does give reasons why he's not the big villain and doesn't want to destroy the world.
Let me assure you, I do not want to destroy the world. That's where all the best slaughter takes place, you know.
Can't really argue with that.
Yeah, honestly, if everything gets destroyed, then what does he do? Of course he doesn't want that outcome. He just wants more pain and suffering in general.
As for the wizard Eldred, he's responsible for destroying his own home. He was a powerful man there and summoned a demon to destroy his enemies. Of course, it went wildly out of control and destroyed everything. Magic might be partly derived from gods, I'm not entirely sure how it works. I don't know much about spells or witchcraft in the real world either. My latest insight on that front comes from a local bookstore. They moved their witchcraft and spirituality section closer to the counter because it was by far the most shoplifted section of the store. I guess they can't conjure dead presidents yet. What's cool about the campaign is that there are choices to make here and there.
Was that an actual thing that was happening? Or maybe it's just a localized thing to where Mandalore lives.
These can slightly alter your goals, your dialogue, and some buffs you get. Naturally, you sometimes have additional side objectives as well. This is neat agency stuff on its own, but you also have a choice in what missions you want to do. Doing a job for them will give you some of their spells and units. You could go full monogod or pursue a mix of favors. If you anger one too much, they might not offer you a mission anymore, unless you help out an ally or a story event happens. There's good banter in between the missions, and it's always fun to see the gods spat with each other.
What?
This is kind of cool, actually. It almost reminds me of Archaon's campaign in Total War Warhammer. Because you're Chaos Undivided, you can choose blessings from either god, but certain blessings from some gods may anger other gods that are like the opposite of those gods, and so each campaign becomes more unique depending on the playstyle that you want to choose and which gods that you want to serve. And what's most important here is we're giving the player a choice, which is always a good thing to do, I say.
Should they continue to suffer for the comfort of savage and brutish beings like the trolls?
I see only one savage and brutish being here.
Damn.
Come now, you mustn't forget me.
Everyone wait! Haven't we all had enough of wars?
No.
The final mission is always the same, but what I like is that the game picks your motivation based on your mission choices. Were you helping a benevolent patron trying to find redemption, or were you helping a demon lord burn stuff down because you've accepted your place? The very end has the final choice as well, where you can react to the narrative you got. With such variety, the campaign's difficulties are all over the place.
That's
but it's
amazing.
a fun ride, and you can try different paths to learn more about the world. I didn't find the deeper parts of the lore to be too captivating, but it was an interesting puzzle to put together. The dialogue writing is excellent and really does elevate its setting. The campaign has a good variety of different maps and objectives, but again, your mileage may vary depending on what you pick. Sacrifice also has the funniest, maybe most direct escort mission line in a video game.
Go to my altar, or I will kill you all.
That's worth a mention. This is an incredibly unique game. It has elements of all kinds of games that would come later.
You know, at the very least, he's direct about it. I appreciate it.
There are multiplayer modes that have like the primordial soup of MOBAs in it. Sacrifice is like a game from a different timeline. It had an expansion planned, but just sold too poorly. I keep imagining, what if this game blew up? What would have come after?
Right? That sucks. This game has so many cool ideas in it. I can only imagine if this game had picked up, and imagine if we had a whole IP surrounding this, and hopefully it didn't get touched by some corporate greed, you know? What we could have had in the modern day when it comes to RTS games, which I mean it's unfortunately kind of a struggling, more niche genre, but it's still going strong in some ways. Regardless though, I would love to see something like this. Something that completely blows my socks off with how weird and unique it is, offering an experience unlike any other, and yet be incredibly fun and intuitive.
The issue is that while the mechanics and ideas were well thought out, it seems like the game itself isn't quite there. They were pushing the technology, and it does show. You'll see the animations freak out from time to time. How you move through the map feels like breaking it sometimes. It's clear that systems like AI weren't all there, and there are interface improvements that could be made. But these are mainly consequences of it just being an old game that was very ambitious. You do have to do some work for the best experience, but I do recommend this game. This is one.
It came out too early. The vision was there, but it was during the wrong time. We needed some better technology behind this first. And I think those are some of the saddest things to see when it comes to really any piece of media. I'm sure you guys have your like niche thing that you enjoy, that you know for a fact would have been incredibly popular if only it had come out just a few years after. But I suppose you could apply this to many things in life where timing is pretty crucial. And unfortunately, there's no way to know the future, so you just gotta hope that you roll well.
There's titles that I would love to see get the HD remaster treatment. If it had proper polish and better AI, the fights could be less chaotic. Even just having multiplayer back would be nice. I would love to see how people now play Sacrifice. That's all for now. Until next time.
All of your mana whores have been slaughtered.
Genius. Still such a great name.
Sorry this one was later. Recording it was a bit of an ordeal. Would you consider updating an old review if things changed? It would be more likely if there was an HD edition or an expansion or something like that. Elite Odyssey is a good candidate, EVE Online I really don't want to go back to. Do you think Kislev is Flanderized in Warhammer 3? Yeah, it does kind of look that way. Like, the whole appeal of the bears was that the bears would be unique, but they're giving everybody a bear. I'll have more to say on that series in another video. Have you checked out Cruelty Squad? Yes, Cruelty Squad is the logical conclusion of video games. Command and Conquer 4 or Thief 4.
That makes sense.
I don't know if that means what I'd rather play or do a video on, but the answer for both is Thief 4. I mean, if I did, a Thief 4 video would be a longer one, because there is a lot to say on it, even though it is a fairly shorter game. The bad decisions that were made are at least kind of interesting in how you could look at it and how games were going back then. With Command & Conquer 4, it's just... oh my god, it's a disaster.
Damn. But didn't Command & Conquer recently get like an HD remaster or something like that? I've seen Command & Conquer in my timeline a few times. And honestly, with us getting into RTS games as well, the fact that I don't know anything about Command & Conquer is probably criminal. I'm sorry, guys. I should probably learn about it so that I can suffer with all of you with how some of the sequels have been going. And I mean, as for Thief, we recently got an announcement, didn't we, for like a new Thief VR game? I guess it kind of works for VR, but I don't know how those games play nowadays or where the lore is and just how it's going in general. If I had to guess, probably not very good.
Yes, would you stop that? I'm really not in the mood.
But yeah, dudes, thank you so much for pointing me to this one. This one was awesome, man. It looks like something that I would have absolutely loved if, say, I was getting into these RTS games back during the day, or if this had come out in a more modern time. Regardless, I hope developers notice this game at all, and maybe take some of these systems, improve upon them, and make something really, really cool. I doubt it, but one can hope. But alright, my dudes, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.